Hi everybody, welcome to Dandelion Cottage and Watercolor Wednesday. I'm Leslie Watkins. I hope you can hear me. I just got a message saying that the connection was broken, so I'm going to do a quick double check here, see if I can find out what's happening. And it looks okay. All right, so sometimes technology fixes itself, I guess. So hi everybody. I hope you're well. I'm kind of excited about today's subject. I have some fringe tree berries and they're beautiful. My fringe tree is loaded with fruit. The branches are bending down and the birds are going crazy. So I figured that before the birds got them all, we should paint some because they're really very beautiful. They're kind of unusual. They're sort of a mix between a Concord grape violet, and they look sort of like an olive. So I'm going to show you those in just a second. But before I do, I just wanted to let you know that it's not too late to get a starter kit with the watercolor paint box, and I'm going to be using a lot of the items that you will find in your starter kit today. So if you have any questions about that, please let me know, or go to dandelioncottagedesign.com. All the information is there. So let's get busy painting. Here they are, and I'm going to zoom you in so you could get a good look at that. Aren't they pretty? All right, so these are fringe tree and fruit, and I guess you would call them drupes because they've got a very large seed in the center, and you can see that they're pretty big. I mean, they're the size of a grape, I would say. And let me get the rest of my things out. I'm also, in a little while, I'm going to post some pictures of the tree so that you can actually see how the tree looks, because as I said, it's loaded and it looks really beautiful. So the materials I'm going to be using for this include the Fluid 100 watercolor paper. So this is the 140-pound cold press paper, which is 100% cotton, so it's archival, great to use, and you get 10 sheets to a pack. I will include a list of all the materials afterwards. There'll be a link. I've got a plexiglass support here that I'm using to put my paper on. It's just the right size. I've got my travel kit. So this is the one that I take with me everywhere I go. I love this little box, and I've already put some water on there. So I used the pipette, okay, which is just a big eyedropper, and I used that to drop a couple of drops of water to activate the paint, and it's just a little convenience. And then of course I've got my travel brush here. So if you decide to get one of the starter kits, you will be getting all of these things that I'm mentioning. And then off to the side, I have a sponge to absorb excess moisture off my brush. I've got a couple of water containers. I've got two, one to rinse my brushes out and one for clean water. And I've got, I've pulled out a handful of other brushes. I'm not sure what I'm going to be using today. And then I want to show you, here is an example of an exercise that one of my students was working on. They left it behind. But it was done on this very nice paper. So the paper is great. And what I did was I just need a little scrap, so I just tore off an edge of it. I'm going to save this because this is going to make a great card front, so I'm going to put this aside. And then here I'm just going to use the back side because this this good cotton watercolor paper can be used on both sides, and I like to use a bone folder just to give that a good rub, so I'm not rubbing moisture or oils from my fingertips into the paper. And get that started. And this is all I need, just a little bit of a scrap, because what I want to do today is I want to show you how I would go about making a quick little monochromatic thumbnail, because that's the current lesson in the watercolor paint box subscription. And so in this month's box you get a tube of burnt umber, and my burnt umber is right here on my palette, and I'm just gonna make a nice puddle ready to go. So I'm just going to dilute that. A lot of times I see students using the watercolor paint straight up without any addition of water, and that is not how you use watercolor. Watercolor is a transparent medium, and so what you want to do is you want to add water to it to adjust the flow and the consistency. And I'm going to be talking more about that later in another video. But for now, what I want to do is I just want to show you how I would do a quick thumbnail study. So I'm going to get my plexiglass set up. I've got my paints. I've got my beautiful specimen. So I want to arrange this a little bit. There are many birds that love to eat these things, and among them are the wild turkeys. And I have seen the turkeys jumping up and down to try to get the berries up high, and it's really funny. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick sketch, and this is only to get my design oriented on the page. And so in this case, I've got 5 fruit, and instead of counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm going to treat them as one complete cluster. And then I've doubled up these stems, so I have a couple of layers of leaves here. So I just want to create a kind of a mass of leaves, and that's all I need. And so if I hold this up to the camera, you'll see that there's very little pencil on there. I'm drawing very lightly, just enough to help guide me as I paint. Now I'm going to be using a smaller brush, and I can't make out the number on this one, but it looks like it's probably a 6 or a 4. And I'm just going to begin by laying in a light wash and I'm reserving, actually I'm not going to do it there, on one of these fruit, I think this one in the foreground, I'm going to reserve a little bit of an area for a highlight, but because the fruit are mainly a kind of a velvety texture at this point. When they were younger or newer, they had a harder surface, but it's starting to soften now. So it almost looks like it's got a very soft kind of a suede or velvet-like texture. And then I can use my brush to shape these leaves. So basically, if I just create enough pressure on my brush, the brush will automatically create that leaf shape. Okay, and then there is a little bit of a cast shadow here. So with a lot of water, I'm just going to indicate that. And I'm going to go back in with plain water and just soften that edge, because it's a shadow and I don't want a hard edge, and just sort of let that fade away. All right, so that, I'm going to zoom you in. So that's my first wash. There's hardly anything there. It's just, really, it's just a little bit of dirty water, okay, and I'm just kind of pushing it around the page. But while it's still damp, I can go back into my mixture here. Let me see if I can get all this on the page so that you can see. There we go. So if I go back into my paint mixture, and this time getting a little bit more pigment, a little bit less water, I could just drop that in, and because the paper in these areas is still damp, I'm going to get a nice soft edge. I can help it along with a little bit of a damp brush. And then paying attention to the shadow on the leaves. This leaf, I can see a little bit of the transmitted light, which means that the light is passing through it. My light is coming from the left-hand side, and it's kind of illuminating the vein in the center of the leaf. So I can pick up a little bit of that detail. And get my stem established. So this is a mixture of wet and wet and wet on dry, because in the areas where I've pre-moistened the paper with my initial wash, the paint is acting as if it's wet and wet, and then in the areas where I have not applied water previously, it's more of a wet on dry, so I'm able to control my edges a little bit more. Okay, but we'll have lots more about that in our upcoming edges lesson. All right, so now I'm going back into my paint, and I'm adding a little more pigment so it's stronger yet, and I can begin to indicate where some of my darkest areas are going to be. So this is the shadow side of the fruit. A couple of places in the recesses of the leaves. The stem. Back side of this leaf, kind of curling up. And there's also some little spots on the leaves showing signs of wear and tear now that they're about to drop in the next couple of weeks. working on my drawing as I go. And the other thing that's happening is that as I continue to paint, the paper is starting to dry. And so I'm able to get a nice hard edge and a lot of detail. So for that, taking a extra dark brush load of paint, and I'm going to add that to my stem. Some of these little leaf stems. And then maybe a little accent in the darkest areas of the fruit. Okay, so there is my quick monochromatic study. All right, nothing to it. So I'm just keeping it, so if off to the side here, if I make a little value strip and just like so, and I let that fade off at the edge. All right, there is my light. There's my light. Here's my medium. And here's my dark. All right, so just 3 steps: light, medium, and dark. If you think of it in terms of light, medium, and dark, and break down your value study into those 3 steps, that is going to be extremely useful to help you transfer those ideas to your colored picture, which we're going to do now. So now I'm going to zoom you out a little bit. I'm going to get my paper. So here's my watercolor paper, and try to arrange this so that you can see everything along with me. Okay. If you have any questions at all, please just post them in the comments, and I will check in a little while to see if I can help anybody. All right, so get this set up. Again, this time I'm going to work a little bit bigger. And so I'm just going to begin with that sweep across the page of the stem, kind of indicate where some of my leaves are. My cluster of fruit, something like this. And again, this is just a very rough sketch. I will refine the drawing as I continue to paint with the brush, so I'm not too concerned about getting everything just exact. What I am concerned about is making sure that everything fits nicely on my page. And this paper measures 5 by 7. So in case you were wondering, this is a 5 by 7 piece of the cold press watercolor paper. When you join the watercolor paint box subscription, you also get practice paper in your kit. And the idea there is that you do as much of the exercises as you possibly can. I hope that you use up all your paper each month, because the more you do, the better you're going to get, and the quicker you're going to get better. All right, so that is looking pretty good. I feel like I need to move this one over. Okay, so if you feel like you need to make a change to your pencil sketch, what I like you to do is use your kneaded eraser. So you'll get a kneaded eraser in your starter box, okay? And a kneaded rubber eraser is one of these very soft, stretchy erasers that self-cleans as you do this. And also it becomes warmer from the heat of your fingertips, and so you can readily shape it into any shape you'd like. And what's nice about these erasers is that they do not abrade the surface of your paper, and you can use them to blot off excess graphite from your pencil. The pink erasers on the pencils tend to smudge, and so I prefer the kneaded rubber eraser. So let's make this little adjustment. I just want to pull this leaf back a little bit, and that's much better. Okay, all right, so now I'm going to do exactly the same thing as I did in my little thumbnail, okay? Only this time I'm going to do it with color. So I'm going to, actually, this would be a really good time to clean off my palette so you can see me mix the colors. So I've got a piece of paper towel here, and I'm just going to clear off a little area. I don't mind having some of this neutral tone on my palette. That'll be useful as I go along, but I just want to begin with a nice bright yellow, because what's happening is that the transmitted light that's coming through these leaves has a yellow undertone. So I'm just going to go ahead and use that for my underpainting, all right, which is to say that I'm going to be painting on the top of these strokes in a few minutes. But just to get them started, I'm going to do something like that. The other thing I want to do is I want to create a little bit of a cast shadow. So for that, I'm moistening the paper, and I can go back. That neutral tone that was here a minute ago would be perfect to drop into that. Just sort of pull that all together. And then you see these kind of elongated leaf shapes just kind of disappear into nothing. All right, so there's a very light wash to begin with. I'm going to do the same thing with my fruit, and I'm going to start with some blue. There we go. All right, so there is a very simple initial wash. And I want you to notice that I'm clustering all those fruit together. I'm not painting them one at a time. All right, and then this one that's a little bit away from the others does have a little bit of a highlight on it, so I'm going to go ahead and save that area for the highlight. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to mix up my green. So these are the yellow, red, and blue that you see me using all the time. You get one tube each in your starter kit, so you'll be all set to go. And all I'm doing is mixing a little bit of my yellow and my blue together to get a kind of a nice medium green, and this is a very light green. And now what I'm going to do is begin to add the green color to those leaves that I started with the pale yellow wash. But this time I'm going to be leaving the veins of the leaf, that pale yellow color, and I'm just going to use the green to go alongside. Okay, so I think you can see that I'm leaving the vein of the leaf. And the vein doesn't show on all the leaves. Now I will, I'll post a picture, as I said, of some of the fringe tree fruit. But really, if you could go and get yourself some grapes, some beautiful, deep, rich, violet Concord grapes, and work from life, that would be best. Of course, if you had access to a fringe tree, that would be even better. But the grapes will work just as well for this exercise. And then these ones that are further back, I'm just going to kind of indicate with a shape, because that's not where the center of interest is going to be. So so there's my second wash. Okay, I'm still using all my light, so I did a quick underpainting just to get some colors established. I'm adding my lights, I'm indicating where the veins and the leaves are. I've added a cast shadow, and now I'm going to go in and I'm going to pay more attention to my drawing with the brush, and I'm going to start adding some of my middle tones. And I can look at my value study to help keep me on track as to where my three different tones are: my lights, my middles, and my deeps. Alright, so now I'm going to go back into my blue, and I'm going to add a drop of red to that, just a little, to make a kind of a deep blue violet. Alright, and I'm going to adding some additional color to the shadow side of the fruit. And because the paper is still damp, I can leave this for just a minute and then go back with a damp brush and just soften those edges so that they blend into one another. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush and just finish blending. I can go back in with a stronger mixture. While it's still nice and wet, drop in just a little more. I want that to be a little bit darker, remembering that the watercolor is going to dry slightly darker than what it appears. Pull these together. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to leave this area alone. This one could be a little bit bigger. I'm going to leave this area alone and I'm going to start working on my leaves. Just doing a little bit of drawing here with the brush. Okay, so if I take some yellow, now there's a little bit of red in my mixture here, so I'm getting a dull green, which is perfect for these shadow areas. And just as I did in the fruit, I'm adding my slightly darker tones to the areas that I just painted with the pale green. And then a couple of strokes over here. Okay, so now I've got a lot of the work is complete here. I can continue refining my drawing. So I can take a good look and see what needs to get done here. There's another leaf down under there that I missed. So I think what I'm going to do is, it's not as bright a green as the others. So if I add a little bit, just a little bit of red to help neutralize that, I'm going to just pop that. Well, before I do that, okay, so here is an example of a little stem. So I want to get my, before I add that other leaf, I'm going to add a dark stem. So there's one here. Another one here. And then this one here. So you want to make sure you get all your fruit attached. Alright, and then what I'd like to do is I'm going to go back to that little leaf under there with this neutral tone. And what I want to do is I want to indicate it down deep in there. In the shadows. But I also want to catch the light on the side of this stem. So I'm just going to leave a little area. Let all this come together. So I'm just leaving that little bit of a white line with the paper to indicate the stem to that fruit. All right, we're just about in the home stretch. So now I have my, soften this edge a little bit. Now I have my middle tones and my lights all established. I'm just making a few little adjustments here or there and there with my edges. I want some of these edges to blend into the shadow area. So here's a place where you need a little more pigment. Okay, and then all I need to do is add some of my dark accents and I'll be done. So for that, I'm going to add a lot of blue to get a deep, dark blue with a touch of red, not too much red, just a tiny bit. There we go. And I'm going to use that in my fruit like so. And I'm just going to let that watercolor move on its own. I'm going to do the same thing in my leaves. Sorry, I think it's time for a coffee break. Hold on. I'm going to go back into my leaves. as soon as I clean up this mess I just made. There we go. Just pulling out some of those highlights. Not a lot, just a little bit, just an indication. And then my darkest darks and my leaves, a little coming along here, under that edge. Blend that a little bit. Actually, that leaf can have a little more yellow, so I can make adjustments to my color. Maybe a little more over here. I'm not going to put too much on these leaves in the background because I want them to just sort of disappear off into the distance, so just a few touches. All right, and then finally, a few of these very dark darks in the shadows. Connect that. And I'm done. So there's my picture, and it's just about the right size for a card front. So if I want to use it on a card, or if I wanted to frame it, I could do that. While this is still wet, I can lift out a little bit of that highlight, just enough as to indicate. Okay, so so there is my fringe tree fruit. I hope you got something out of that. I don't see any questions, but feel free to make comments below. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you did, please subscribe and like and follow and all the things. I'd appreciate that. Remember, if you're interested in following along with some of the materials, there's still time to get the Watercolor Paint Box Starter Kit that contains paints, brushes, paper, and a lot of other accessories that I think that you'll find very useful. And if you're interested in joining the Watercolor Paint Box subscription in time for the monochromatic lesson, which I think is extremely important, you can still do that. And all that information is at Dandelion Cottage Design on the website. And I will also be sending out information in the next issue of Notes from Dandelion Cottage. And to do that, just hit the sign up button and you'll get on the list, and I'll let you know what specials I have coming up. So with that, stay well, stay happy, stay creative, and I will see you next time.